Hey guys, welcome back to DIY Guitar Making. Today we are going to be bending. We're going to be bending sides on my wonderful side bending carousel that I have back there. So it will be machine bending as opposed to hand bending. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about both types, but the main focus here is machine bend. Alright, well, 20 seconds into the show there, my battery died. We're off to a great start. That's just poor planning on my part. Starting out with a, 5% battery life. Anyway, we're back, and yeah, like I said, machine bending demonstration in just a little bit. But for now, let's get to your questions. Another little bit of poor planning. I don't have my chair underneath me right now. Let me go grab my chair. All right. I like to sit when I answer questions. All right, so the first question comes from Keith Short. Keith writes, "You mentioned building a radius dish. I have done the math and built one using the shim method." So this is from a video that I did, or it was from one of my earlier Q&As, where I talked about the shim method of building a radius dish. It's a method where you don't need a CNC machine or anything crazy like that to build yourself a radius dish. So that's what he's talking about here. "I have done the math and built one using the shim method. Thick base with shims to allow thin sheet to be pulled into spherical shape." That describes it well. "A link to my video showing construction at the end of suffering through my ukulele intro." Yeah, I watched the video. The ukulele was nice. And the video, if you guys want to check it out, I'm not going to load it into this video because I don't know if Keith would want me to do that. But anyway, he gives the link there, and I watched the video, and it was a nice speed through of the process of putting down these shims and gluing a thin sheet of plywood to the shims to give you that spherical shape. So if you want to visually see what I'm talking about, you can check out that video. "I used flathead screws to pull down the 1/4 inch thick plywood sheet. I built a second small radius dish for vacuum clamping back braces. For that one, I first sanded the narrow side of a 14-inch length of 2x4 lumber to the dish radius, creating a convex shape on one side of the timber. I then attached coarse sandpaper to the 2x4 tool and sanded the radius into the face of a 3/4 inch thick 24-inch square sheet of plywood. A bit tedious, but it worked well." Yeah, it sounds tedious, but yeah, that'll work. One little detail of that, and I'm sure you know this, Keith, but that will give you not a spherical radius. That would give you, just like this contour board I have here, it'll give you a radius in just one direction, which can also work for gluing up plates. It works differently. Your guitar will come out with a radius in one direction, but that's still okay. It's not what most people do. Most people use a straight up radius dish, but that is a way to get the job done and still have a pretty good radius on your guitar. So I just wanted to mention that and highlight what Keith was talking about there. Both of those are cool ideas. The shim method and that pop was the metal cans I have over there. As the shop either heats up or cools down, sometimes they just pop on you. Wakes you up. Okay. So anyway, nice job, Keith. Next question, Sergeant Horvath. "Hi, do you use cut-down flooring sheet plastic tongues for your Go Bar deck?" The yellow ones. So, I don't know what cut-down flooring sheet plastic tongues are, but I know what he's asking. He's asking about the Go Bars that I use on my Go Bar deck. I'm going to grab one to show you guys. Actually, I grabbed two different types that I have. This is the old style that I used to use and still use for certain light-duty tasks. These are just kite rods. So this is the material used to create like the structure of a kite. So I'd imagine you can get these at like wherever you get kite supplies. I don't know. They're a bit more light duty. I switched to these, which are fiberglass, and I get them from Stu Mac. This is what Stu Mac today sells as Go Bars. Okay? They are fiberglass. I don't know where they come from. A lot of things with Stu Mac are pulled from somewhere else, some other industry, like their binding tape. I'm sure that's tape. I don't know what it's for actually, but they, you know, found a certain tape that was used for something else, some other commercial application, and found out that it works well as binding tape, and voila, presented it to you guys. Same thing with these, I would guess. I'm speculating here, but I'd imagine this comes from something, and maybe it is what he's talking about, but I don't know, Sergeant, what cut down flooring sheet plastic tongues are. Maybe they're these. Anyway, to answer your question though, Stu Mac is where I get these, if that was your question. Russell Scott writes, the True Oil finish sounds interesting. Is it easier to get an even finish on the cedar top with True Oil over French polish? Is the True Oil instruction separate from the main course on your site? So first I'll answer the second question. Yes, the True Oil, I have a True Oil course, teaches you how to do a True Oil finish on an acoustic guitar, and that course is both sold as its own separate thing, and also it is a part of the Building an OM acoustic course. So if you buy the Building an OM acoustic course, at the very end of that course you will see all the content for the True Oil course as well. But you can also purchase that course as its own separate thing if you don't want to spend the money for the entire Building an OM acoustic course. Okay, so there's both. Is it easier to get an even finish on the cedar top with True Oil over French polish? They're very much the same as far as getting, you know, a good flat even finish. I don't think one is easier than the other, and especially the way that I do True Oil is very similar to French polish anyway, technique wise. Usually when people say French polish, what they're referring to is a certain hand rub technique used with shellac. So you can get similar results either with True Oil or shellac. And I just got one more question here. Actually, it's a comment from DALG Guitars, and he writes, I'm sure you know this by now, but if you are doing a 12,000ths of an inch string and you have a 10,000ths of an inch file, you can rock the file side to side to create more width. And yes, thank you for that, DALG Guitars. Yes, you can, what he's referring to is I did a nut slotting demonstration, and I was using the gauged files that you purchase from luthier suppliers or off of Amazon or anything like that, where you have the an individual file for each gauge of string. But one thing that you can do on the cheap is you could just use one thin file, or even a you know, some people, if you really want to do it on the cheap, is use a razor saw that you can get from like a hobby store, and you can cut all your slots with just one file or that one razor saw, simply by rocking the saw or the file from side to side to create more width. Of course, this is more work, it's a little bit more tedious, and you have to focus more when you're doing it, because you are by eye and by hand adjusting the width to fit each string independently. Whereas if you just get a set of gauged files, it's a pretty surefire thing that you're going to get the right width on each string as long as you select the right file. But yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. that is sort of an old trick. It is in the old Dan Earlywine. He mentions Dan Earlywine in his question too. It's in the old Dan Earlywine guitar repair book from when I started out. I don't remember when that book came out, but that was one of the first books I read, actually, was Dan Earlywine's guitar repair manual. And I don't know what edition they're on now, but that book is still a good read today. So anyway, thanks for bringing that up. All right, let's go bend some side slats. All right, guys, so my bending machines are over here, but everything starts first just here with the material itself, just so that I can lay things out. I have a template here. This has little marks on it that are too faint for you to see on the camera, but trust me, they're there. And I've used them to transfer 3 marks, one for my waist. That's the most important mark in order to know where the waist bend is going to be. And then I have 2 other marks for the very ends of the lower bout and the very end of the upper bout. And so I've got that transferred onto here. And first thing I'm going to do, pull out some parchment paper. By the way, this side slat, it goes without saying that it is already thicknessed and it's cut to width, but most importantly, it's already thicknessed to 90 thousandths of an inch. This is East Indian rosewood, Dalbergia latifolia, and 90 thousandths of an inch is a good measurement to shoot for really any rosewood. Rosewood bends actually very easily. It's one of the easier woods to bend. If I was bending something more difficult, like figured mahogany or something like that, I would thickness it down to about 75 thousandths of an inch. Alright, so this is my parchment paper, and I always wrap the sides in both parchment paper and aluminum foil, as you will see. The parchment paper helps to hold the moisture in. We're going to add moisture to this in a moment. And the aluminum foil really protects the sides and also locks in all that moisture so that the wood can basically bake in that little wrapping that we're going to give it. Why don't we go ahead and spritz this first. Some woods, like walnut or mahogany, you would actually soak in hot water for about 15 minutes. However, woods like rosewood, cherry, there's a number of other woods too, just need to be spritzed with water. Get the back side too. And I'm going to first place this in the parchment paper, just like that. So my waist center line here, as I'm wrapping this in the parchment paper and then the aluminum foil, I want to keep track of where the waist is, because if I just wrap it up, I won't be able to see where the waist is, I won't know where it is, and then I won't be able to line it up with the shoe on my bending machine. So just to keep track of this, I'm gonna always keep this marker over here, and I'm just gonna make a little mark on the parchment paper, And then I can still see that mark through the parchment paper. It's right there. Okay. A little more moisture on this end. Okay. And where's my aluminum foil? Here it is. Okay. Place this in the aluminum foil. And remember, I want to keep track of where that center is, so now got that center line, and since we're about to wrap it again, I transferred it to the edge of the foil. Don't want to lose track of the center line. All right. So one of the primary purposes for the aluminum foil is to protect the surface of the wood from the heat blanket. All right, and this doesn't reach all the way to meet the end here. There's a little bit of side showing, but that's okay. All right, so now we're going to assemble our bending sandwich. We're going to have 2 pieces of spring steel. Makes a cool sound. There it is. 2 pieces of that. Those will be like the bread of our sandwich. There's going to be one on the bottom, one on the top. This will be in the middle, and then also in the middle, on top of this, will be our heating blanket. Okay? The heating blanket is like the cheese, and this is the bologna. And we've just made a bologna and cheese sandwich with this as the bread. All right, so this goes underneath. This goes right here. I'm going to line up my little blue mark here with, you can't see it on the camera, but I just have a little notch here that I cut into the blue steel here so that I can align this notch later on with the bending shoe. Again, this is all to keep track of that center line, because when we assemble this sandwich, we won't be able to see the side anymore. And to hold this thing in place, what's nice is you don't have to tape it or anything like that. With these long overhanging ends of the foil, if you just wrap those down like that, that's enough. That holds it in place right at that center mark, or that waist mark, I mean, where we want it. All right, now like I said, here is our heating blanket, and here's our other piece of spring steel. That's going to go on there like that. And we'll take this whole delicious sandwich over to the side bending machine. All right, so here I am at one of my side bending machines. Sometimes just getting it in there is a little bit awkward. All right, so it's in. And right there, I was just lining up that very important waistline that we were keeping track of. I can see it right through here, that little notch on the steel, which is where our waist is. And now to hold that in position, we haven't started the heat yet or anything. This is just lining things up. I'm gonna tighten this down, not a lot because it'll break because it's not warm yet, but just enough to hold it in alignment. All right, so now it's held, and I use these little metal clamps here these little spring clamps, mini spring clamps, to hold the sandwich together, because in order for the heating blanket to do its job and heat the wood evenly, or relatively evenly, across its full length, we need to clamp it tight across its full length, otherwise the heat just kind of escapes. And these little clamps work great for that. By the way, so I've built these side bending machines, but you can simply purchase them. LMI sells them. I don't know if Stu Mac has a version, they might. Also, you can buy plans and build them. I know there are plans out there for this design right here. Not my plans, I didn't make the plans. But yeah, if you Google around, you can find plans for a side bending machine. Build one yourself, or you can buy one. Either way. So the bending form, by the way, this guitar-shaped part that's underneath the sandwich right now, that is separate and removable from the whole machine. So I have several of these molds, these bending forms, for different body shapes. So I can pull this one out and put a different one in. You can't see all the bending machines on the camera, but there's 4 bending machines. The reason I have 4 of them is so that I can bend enough sides for 2 guitars all at once without having to wait for the side to set and cool down in the mold. I can just knock out 4 sides just like that. So it's for efficiency. Just 2 more. Okay. So that's all locked together. And now I take my 2 little meat thermometers and I'm just going to place them on either side of the waist here. Turn them on. Okay. I have a temperature controller. This is important because if I just plug the heating blanket in by itself directly into the outlet, the outlet will continue to feed energy into the heating blanket. It'll get hotter and hotter and hotter, and it'll get too hot. And basically it'll feed energy into it until it burns out the element there. So if you use this temperature controller, I can turn it on, and there we go, it's on right now. By the way, I don't know if you guys can hear that humming sound that's coming from here. That is a mystery to me. I'm actually going to ask crowdsource an answer from you guys. So when I turn this off, that stops. When I turn it on, it starts. And this never happened before I plugged my air filtration, my jet air filtration device, which is underneath this table. I plugged that into this same outlet here that I run the temperature controller off of. And now when I plug a heat blanket into the temperature controller and turn it on, the fan actually spins on my air filtration device. What's up with that? I don't know how all that stuff works. Electricity is like magic to me. So if anybody out there understands what's going on, I'd be interested to hear about it. But the fan spins slowly and it just hums. Is this something I should be worried about? I don't know. I'm kind of afraid to even touch the air filtration device. go ahead and turn that off. I always unplug for safety as well, and I can even just turn this power strip off. So there's no risk. It's definitely the kind of thing you don't want to forget to turn off or unplug, and then you walk away and that thing just keeps feeding heat into there. Obvious problems can result from that. Alright, that's it. That's machine bending in a nutshell. If any of you guys can tell me why my air filtration device, the fan spins slowly and it hums when I turn on my heating blanket through my controller. They're plugged into the same power strip. What kind of voodoo is going on there? I don't know. This was fun, guys. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now. All right. So here is my heating blanket plugged into my temperature controller. Temperature controller goes to this outlet here, or this power strip. And then also plugged into the power strip is my jet air filtration unit, which is underneath this table. And check this out. When I turn that on, it starts spinning and making noises. I don't get it. Then I turn it off, and it stops. If you learned something here, please give this video a like and subscribe so you can be notified when I release a new DIY guitar making video. And if you want to really learn more, take one of my structured online courses at ericschaferguitars.com or register for a hands-on guitar building workshop here with me in Burnville, Pennsylvania.